Boo.
All right, man. Your time. Your time is now. Yeah, last story of the night.
Yeah.
Get the music going.
All right. This story, I want to say that this story is attached with a separate story that isn't involved with it's not a scary story, but this was something I was able to verify, something else that happened to this woman, and I will address that at the end. But she starts off by saying, my husband died in 2020. After he died, I found a series of very unpleasant things about him. It was devastating. It took me more than 3 years to come to grips with. He died in August of 2020, and I sold our condo in June of 2021. He had renovated the entire condo. Kitchens, both bathrooms, flooring, trim stores, everything. Took him nearly 3 years. I have 2 small dogs, and when the realtor told me someone was coming to see the property, I took the dogs and I locked the door and went outside. The realtor told me to be out for about 30 minutes or so. After that period of time, I went back inside and upstairs. The door was locked. I entered, and when I did, it looked as if people had been there. Doors were moved, the laundry doors were wide open. I had closed them. Then I got a text from the realtor asking me why I didn't put the key in the lockbox on the main floor outside. The people couldn't get in with their realtor. I'll be honest, I was in a very bad place after he died, particularly after what I found. Thinking in detail was not something I was doing. Went to the main washroom and saw the bath mat was sitting over the tub, not the way I had left it. I touched it and it felt wet, almost like someone had gotten out of the shower and had been standing on it. It was a fairly big apartment, 2 bedrooms and an office. When the dogs and I were in bed at night, I could hear noises in the kitchen after he died. I was too afraid to get out of bed. It was a concrete building and we couldn't hear anything people were doing in apartments near us or hearing something like that at all. I moved in June of 2021 to a new condo. The first night there, I was alone. Dogs were being taken care of by a family member. I was laying in bed, not asleep, laying on my side at the edge. I felt something or someone brush past me. My hair actually moved. It scared the hell out of me. I lay there for a few minutes, afraid to move. Finally, I moved again. I moved far away from where I had been living. Last Christmas Eve, I was in bed. My bedroom door was open. I clearly heard 3 knocks on the door. It happened twice. This also really scared me. I'd never been one to think of the spirit world until recently. Last Christmas, I made statements out loud. I told him to leave me alone. So far, all has been good. The last 4 years have been a real ride. Now, as I said, I was able to verify something about this woman. She mentioned several times that she learned something about her husband in a completely separate post on a different group about dealing with narcissistic people in their life. She found out that her husband was had a stroke, and she didn't have her phone, but he had his phone. So she asked him for the code so she'd call 911. And he told her the code, but then he immediately said, "I'm sorry." And he died shortly after that. She opened up the phone and she found texts from a woman that he was having an affair with for the past 10 years, and including several pictures that they had sent back and forth. That's when she realized that she had been lied to and emotionally manipulated for several years. So she believes that the spirit of this emotionally manipulative husband had been following her around and toying with her since he passed.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
So the spirit's seeking some sort of vengeance?
I don't even know if it's vengeance or if it's more like continuing his behavior in life. You know, just like assuming that she was still his and, you know, his bad behavior, he could continue. You know, she said that the year before she had told the spirit to leave her alone. She hadn't seen anything or heard anything since then. So perhaps he did, and perhaps he will leave her alone. It reminds me of a story I had heard. I don't remember all the details because I just can't remember them at the moment. But my brother told me a story that he had heard from somebody. He talked to this guy who was in a halfway house at one point, and he had a friend who died. He was laying in bed the night that the guy died, he heard the door open to his room, and the guy had shared a room with him there at the halfway house. He heard the guy call out his name, the dead man called out his name. And he said, "Am I alive?" And he said, "No, man, you're not alive. You need to go." And he said, "Where I gotta go?" He said, "I'm not sure, but you can't stay here." And he said, "Okay." And he left. And he never heard the spirit again.
Wow. So scary. The posters are falling down in the studio, I guess, behind me. I think it's been down the whole time, but
I didn't even notice that, but yeah, it is down.
unless it came down during, I don't know.
But anyway, the idea of telling the spirit that it has to go.
Yeah.
I've heard other people say that before too. That you couldn't do that. If a spirit doesn't have sway over you, right? Well, some people say they don't. It doesn't actually have power over you. It
Right.
thinks it does, and it will try to exert a power over you. But if you tell it to go, it will go.
So, man, you gotta get the hell out.
Yeah. So I feel like very similar situation. Although the one man, he was not an evil man. This guy was, he was emotionally manipulating this woman. He was cheating on her for 10 years. And also, he had a kid with the woman he was cheating on her with. That's a very terrible thing to do to a person. And then to continue to torture them in the afterlife is a very terrible thing, too. By, messing with stuff, making messes, and making noises. It's a terrible, terrible thing. I could see that a person who has that manipulative spirit about them in life may be having that in death. And so that's what I took away from the story. And then, like I said, I always check things when I can, and I found out that other story that didn't mention the spirit, didn't mention a ghost.
Right.
It was just talking about what happened when the guy died. And then later on, she talked about the ghostly encounters. I thought it was very creepy, subtly insidious. You had a little bit of whatever he was doing, he felt like he had right to do.
Yeah.
Until she told to leave.
You'd have to, yeah. I just thankful I've never experienced something like that. I always think that when I hear these stories, I'm like, man, I'm glad I don't have something like that I deal with,
Yeah.
What a cool night of stories, though, man.
Jeff Townsend Media. CG, good night.
And the question is, do I stay here? Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?